Bootu boys. Meet the Bootu boys. They're a modern... What age are we in?
And real life?
Yeah, like now, like 2023. We're in the platinum age or something.
I never thought of it that
platinum
way.
Age podcast. Whatever.
I want to ask a question
and
before
what's that,
you even introduce.
Spencer
Yeah,
Hendricks?
you beat me to it. You introduced me. Is Yabba Dabba Doo Fred's catchphrase?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't he say it at all that episode? Or I think this one.
He says it in this one.
Does he?
I'm Brian Vaughn. Fred Flintstone definitely says Yabba Dabba Doo in this. And I had the same question. When did the catchphrase enter the picture? We discussed how the theme song was not actually present in the first episode we covered, but is here.
Well, I'll tell you about Yabba Dabba Doo.
Is it just like an exclamation, like hell yeah? Or
Pretty
is it,
much.
Or is it like a hello?
No, it's more like hell yeah, because I remember when Stone Cold Steve Austin would give a guy a stunner, he'd say Yabba Dabba Doo.
Give me a Yabba Dabba Doo.
And then he'd crack open a club and drink the nectar from it.
No, the Yabba Dabba Doo thing, I read the origin story of it and pushed it out of my brain because I have no interest in Flintstones anymore.
It was stupid and boring.
It was something like whoever created it, Alan Reed, the guy who voiced Fred, I think was the one who came up with it, saw something on something that resembled it, and then he said Yabba Dabba Doo. So it's not that interesting.
They didn't take that from the Honeymooners then?
No. We're talking the Flintstones today. In case you're not aware from all the Yabba Dabba Doo talk, we are discussing Season 5, Episode 7, A Haunted House is Not a Home.
I say that a lot.
It's better than the last one, right?
Yeah, and we're getting close to the end of the show's run by now because it was only the 6 seasons.
This is at least a lighthearted children's type show, a little easier to get through. Still felt boring and long, but better.
But it is a romp, at least. The last one was not a romp. The last one was awful. Spencer, when you picked these episodes, I know you announced that you wanted to do something haunted because you do spooky or you do grandma.
Mm-hmm.
So you picked this one for me, of course. The problem is you missed the Great Gazoo either direction. Episode 6 had the Great Gazoo. Episode 8 had the Great Gazoo. This one did not, which was disappointing to me.
Since last week's episode, we've been getting a lot of emails, letters, calls from Z-Talksians, people from Z-Talks who are disappointed that we're not talking about the Great Gazoo more.
So let's talk about the Great Gazoo.
He doesn't like the past.
Alien. He doesn't like the past. He grants wishes.
Yeah, he can really do it all. I mean, he can grant wishes, yes, but he doesn't like to be known for that.
I watched a thing on YouTube because I was like, I'm going to see about the Great Gazoo since I missed him in these episodes. And it was Me TV or whatever the thing was. It's the first thing if you search Great Gazoo. And it was the best zingers from Great Gazoo. And whoever put this compilation together doesn't know what a zinger is because it's just him being like, Fred, you're fat. And that's it.
Well, that might be the best he does in the show. We've already talked about how this show doesn't really go above and beyond on its jokes.
I think Alan Cumming would have done better. That's just all I have to say about it.
Wasn't born yet. Well, he might have been born 1964.
I don't know how old he is.
I don't either.
He was Nightcrawler in X2, X-Men United. I know that. Now, before we get into this episode of the Flintstones, however, I wanted to talk more about Hanna-Barbera, the production company that made the thing. They made 1 billion cartoons. You've seen a lot of them. You know a lot of them. I know you guys know a little bit about the history of the company because I taught you about it last week, including Huckleberry Hound, Quick Draw McGraw. This time around, though, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to quiz you. This is like Perry or Scary, but with Hanna or Barbera.
So we figure out which of these cartoons Matthew Perry was in?
Correct. Now, you're going to figure out, of these things that are Hanna-Barbera related, did I make it up, or is this a real Hanna-Barbera thing?
Okay.
And you can work together on this one, much like Perry or Scary, when Spencer and I work together.
It's a good thing I watched Wacky Racers a lot.
Well, I have a couple of different categories, if you will.
Wacky Racers? Is it racers or races?
I think it's racers, because the spotlight is on the people themselves.
That's what I thought, too.
Who might come up later. We'll see. So I have a couple different categories. First off, I have real or fake Flintstones episodes/movies/specials. After the show went off the air in 1966, they made an immediate movie, which was called A Man Called Flintstone, I think, where it was a spy parody. That was closure for this Flintstones because they were canceled, midway through the season or whatever.
Put it in the ground.
They then brought them back periodically throughout the 40 years since, more than that, 60 years since. So which of these that I'm going to give you, which are titles and plots of the story, are real and which ones are ones I made up? I didn't do any trickery with you, but I did write the synopsis myself rather than take it from someone else. So it will be in my verbiage for the most part. I present to you the Flintstones on the Rocks. Fred and Wilma's marriage is in serious jeopardy, so Barney and Betty decide to take them to Acapulco for their anniversary. A mishap with a diamond thief named Xavier leads the thief to try and seduce Wilma. Is that real or fake?
It could go either way because he did not go over the top gonzo with this description like he often does. So Rockapulco is such a boring sounding Flintstones name. But the seduction thing is where I'm hung up on.
Yeah, and it may have been a lot more innocent than, because again, he phrased it in how he wanted to.
Do you want to go real?
I don't.
You don't? Okay, I'm going to trust you because I'm very on the
I
fence,
really
which
do.
is made of
I am
stone.
too. The problem is I just can't quite sign off on this being real. I want to, but I can't.
Okay, we're going to say scary.
All right, scary. Not Perry on this one, which means fake. This is real. This was a 2001 adult-oriented reboot that failed miserably. And yeah, that their marriage was on the rocks. I guess the humor was crass,
and
mean.
Realistic.
On the rocks.
Because you get it. So yeah, real thing.
I wish they would have explored that in depth in the 60s show, that their relationship was horrible.
I wish they'd have done anything in
Yeah,
the 60s
that's true.
show.
They didn't.
Next up, we have the Flintstones, It's a Hard Rock Life. After losing his job at the rock factory, Fred begrudgingly takes an opportunity to be a roadie for a hot new rock group, Stony Dan.
Okay.
Fred starts to love life on the road, but after a bad high where he ingests too much of a new drug called Quaaludes, he crashes his foot car into some groupies, he finally sobers up and returns to his family. Real or fake?
Well, that one's a little more
I
of
think we're going to go fake on that one.
That's a little more of a, what was it, Daffy Dunk or?
That's what's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is correct. That was the fake one that I made. Quaaludes, because you know the earthquakes.
I liked
It's
it.
the best I could do.
Stony Dan, because rocks.
Because it's Steely Dan here.
Mm-hmm.
Because steel wasn't around. They hadn't invented iron yet.
No.
Well, what about Energy, a national issue? A 1977 educational film featuring Charlton Heston as narrator, the Flintstones cast travels throughout history, including Civil War America, ancient Rome, and the Renaissance, explaining all throughout the show about why we should create energy self-sufficiency.
That's a tough one. Instinct is it might be real because it's really stupid and boring.
My big hang-up is Charlton Heston does not seem like a guy interested in self-sufficient energy, right? He would say bomb a country and take the resources needed for an energy. But maybe he wasn't like that at the time.
It's hard to say without
What
a little
year
more
did you
context.
say, Van?
77?
Oh,
1977.
that's absolutely possible. I think it's real.
Let's go real.
Bingo, you got it. This one's real. This was a educational short that was made and sent to classrooms to explain to people. And yes, Brian, I'm kind of with you. I think people like Charlton Heston in the 70s probably were a little more mellow, if you will, if I want to use the parlance of the times.
They weren't convinced yet that you had to buy into every aspect of this thing to, you had to hardline it.
Later, Charlton Heston probably wouldn't do it. But all right, next up we have the Flintstones Wind Up Wilma.
Later Charlton Heston, when he joined the NRA, I think he first thought it was the National Rock Association from his Flintstones time.
But he was happy to be there anyway.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought that was so good. I had to interrupt you.
I want to stick that one in there. That's worth it. Flintstones Wind Up Wilma. Wilma is a celebrity when she gets a shot at the big leagues and becomes a pitcher for the Bedrock Dodgers after nailing a couple of robbers with a melon at the grocery store.
I love that, but it's too good to be true, right? I mean, that didn't really happen.
Bedrock Dodgers, very lazy. But
I just...
Wouldn't Van have named it like Bedrock?
Well, maybe.
Something, Stegosaurus.
But that's such a cool story that Wilma became a pitcher.
I know.
I love that. And if that had happened and we had watched that episode, we might be saying different things about the Flintstones.
Yeah, I'm gonna trust you on that.
I'm gonna side with you, but I think it's
What
possible.
did I say this was?
I don't remember anymore.
What do you think it is?
My instinct was wrong the first time when I said it.
Okay, I think I thought it was real because Bedrock Dodgers. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I thought it might be fake, but let's go with your instinct because last time I was wrong on mine.
Okay.
We're saying real?
We're saying real.
That is correct. This was a movie after the fact. They made a whole movie about this. Yeah. Wilma, pitcher.
If they had done that in one of the episodes that, like from the show we're covering, I'm sure I would have found that. And
it sounds zanier than anything we saw.
Yeah, it's probably a pretty good movie.
I want to see her nail those robbers with a melon.
Yeah.
Did it kill him?
I want to see her pitch against...
There's blood.
I want to see her pitch against Pedro Martinez in his prime.
What if Don Lemon is there and he tries to tackle and they beat him? Don Zimmer?
CBS's Don Lemon? Don Zimmer, yeah.
That's the one. Last one of the fake Flintstones movies, episodes, etc. This one's titled Sorghum, Superfood of the Future. Fred and Barney quit their jobs to get into the hot new agriculture racket and are stuck with a broom corn farm, much to their disappointment. But the Great Gazoo takes them on a trip through history, showing them just why sorghum is the #1 bumper crop in the United States. From its humble beginnings as a wild crop native to Sudan to 1,000 years in the future, showing a society fueled by a flowering plant, Barney and Fred go to realize just how important Hanacoidae andropogonodiae is for humanity. Sponsored by the American Sorghum Council.
Couple of things.
Yeah,
I think that's fake. And then
I do.
The second thing is Don Lemon was with CNN and was fired. He was never with CBS, like I said. But I think that's fake.
I do too. It had some nice touches in there, but ultimately it sounded like you had some fun with that one, and I understand why.
And I appreciate the Sorghum Council getting in touch with Van to sponsor this episode.
Yeah, that one's fake. I did that one. I read the weird energy thing and thought, okay, I can do that. So I made that thing.
Well, no, that actually did give me a brief moment of pause.
When he did that, I was like, okay, maybe this isn't his, but it was you. You did it.
All right, real or fake Hanna-Barbera cartoons. These aren't necessarily Flintstones related. In fact, they're not Flintstones.
Oh, they are real. They made a lot of them.
Well, I'm going to ask you if these specific ones are real, because they did make a lot of them, because they did cheap animation, which we'll discuss here in a bit. So first off is Dr. Cheesefeet, PhD.
I've never heard of that.
A college professor mouse with a doctorate in behavioral psychology has a secret. When he eats too much cheese, he turns into a monstrous Bigfoot-like beast. Dr. Cheesefeet helps his students solve ghost mysteries, all while trying to hide his terrible secret, featuring a young Richard Dreyfuss as the voice of Dr. Cheesefeet. Real or fake?
I don't think so.
We're going to go fake on that one.
Fine.
I would love
It sounds
watch
awesome.
it.
Yeah, potential's through the roof.
Behavioral psychology. It's a rockin' field. All right, how about this one? This one's called The Funky Phantom. 3 teenagers discover the long-dead ghost of a Revolutionary War soldier who, upon being freed, decides to help the kids solve crimes alongside their dog and the Funky Phantom's cat, who is also a Revolutionary War ghost.
I'm going to say fake
I
again.
think so too. I think doubled up on the fake.
You're going fake on that one? That one's real.
What?
The Funky Phantom. He talks like
It
this.
sounds like Ghost Scooby-Doo, kind of.
It does.
Yeah, a little bit, but...
Which is just
Well,
Scooby-Doo.
actually it is, because they made Scooby-Doo, Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah.
So they just copy, post,
I guess that
whatever
makes
that.
sense, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, fine. Next up, we've got Frankenstein Jr.
That's
and the
real.
Impossibles. Can I read it first? This show features 2 shows, much like how Garfield and Friends would do the thing with the egg with feet and the mean sheep.
Yeah.
U.S. Acres.
USA.
Similar to that. So Frankenstein Jr. features a boy scientist, Buzz Conroy, and he's fighting supervillains with the aid of a powerful robot named Frankenstein Jr.
Duh.
The Impossibles features a trio of superheroes called Multi-Man, Fluid Man, and Coil Man, whose civilian alter egos are those of a Beatles-esque rock band. So Frankenstein Jr. and the Impossibles.
So I believe that is real.
You said real.
I think so.
He's confident.
I believe that's real.
Okay, well, that is real.
I
Did you know
remember
this?
Frankenstein Jr.
I don't, but
The Impossibles I didn't, so I was a little thrown off by that, who Waterman was or whatever.
Fluid Man.
Yeah.
All right, next up we have Tank Gunderly and the Hellcats. Tank Gunderly is an armadillo with an impenetrable outer shell who leads a group of ace pilots called the Hellcats, who are actual cats, during World War I. The Hellcats' names are Blast, Fissure, Blaze, and Trina, and the chief villain of the series is a very German shepherd called the Dread Baron, Ludwig von Barker. Real or fake?
I don't think that's gonna happen.
Gotta say that's fake,
Yeah.
but I like this one a lot. This is just as good as Cheese Feet.
It is fake. I did make this one up. So good job on that one. Couple more here. Next up is Goober and the Ghost Chasers. 3 teenagers solve ghost mysteries
How
featuring
many-
their wacky dog sidekick, Goober, who can involuntarily turn invisible. The show features cameos from the Partridge Family and Wilt Chamberlain.
That sounds exactly like Scooby-Doo again, so is it real?
It's got to be, right? Like that's a real thing they did.
Did they do 3 of them? They already have done 2 we know of. We're going to say
Real.
We're saying
Sticking with
real.
real on that one? That one is real.
Wow.
Goober is like a stoner dog.
It's like a
in-
Shaggy.
It's Shaggy, but dog
Yeah.
form.
Zoinks, I've turned into a dog, Scoob. Oh no, I'm a person.
Rawr. Gee, gang, I've got an ascot. That's my Fred. I don't know.
I'm a nerd. That's Velma.
Oh, Wilt Chamberlain said that.
Yeah. He would never say that.
No.
He would say things like, I scored a lot of points in more ways than one.
Oh yeah. What was it, 20,000 women or
That's
something?
what he says.
He's like, damn, Goober, you're looking fine.
You know why they called him Wilt the Stilt?
Penis.
No, it's because he was tall, you pervert.
Sorry, my bad. Well, is this real or fake? Moby Dick and Mighty Mightor. Similar to Frankenstein Jr. and The Impossibles, Moby Dick and Mighty Mightor are two shows combined into 1 half-hour slot. Moby Dick is a friendly whale who helps out a pair of young orphans, Tom and Tub, and he saves them from various seagoing villains. Mighty Mightor features a teenage caveman named Tor and his pet dinosaur Tog. Mightor rescues a hermit from an Allosaurus, and the hermit gives Tor a magical club that transforms him into a muscular and powerful Mightor and allows him to shoot energy blasts from his club. Real or fake?
Very well written on that one. Very well created.
You don't buy Mighty Mightor and Moby Dick?
The problem with this is I don't buy it either, but part of the Mighty Mightor stuff sounds like Captain Caveman stuff to me, a little bit. So I was like, am I conflating things? Or do they do more of those, of cavemen shows? But it's got to be fake.
I think so. Some of that was just a little too you.
On the nose. It's very real.
No!
It is absolutely real.
That Tog thing, that really hit the back of my brain.
I found it after I'd written all this, and I thought I have to shoehorn this in. This is absurd.
You did well, because that was a stumper.
I'm going to be Googling all these later
Mighty
tonight.
Mightor. All right, last round here. This is a rapid-fire round. We'll just go through it real quick. This is Hanna-Barbera characters. So we've broadened it out. These aren't necessarily shows. It's just characters within any
Snidely
of the
Whiplash
show.
type guys.
Dick Dastardly.
Real.
Sure.
That's real. Good job. Mildew Wolf.
Gross.
This is a wolf that has been in the bathtub.
And it's like rotting a little bit?
And
sort
like
of decaying?
needs to be sprayed down. I don't think
No.
so.
Going fake?
I feel no.
Yeah.
That one's real, and it's voiced by
What?
Paul Linda.
It's real and it's gross.
I'm a wolf that's a little bit dirty, sweetheart.
Oh, spade ahead. All right.
What a hero of the 60s.
Okay, next we have Captain Tough, and those are letters for an acronym, TUFF,
Yeah,
I figured.
I think he's real.
and Officer Fishtail.
I think they're real.
You
I
going
could
real?
go for that.
Going real, that's real. Good job there. I don't know what show, but that is absolutely real. Clamhead.
Is his head open and shut?
I'm not giving any details.
Yes,
about
mine
Clamhead.
does. Mouth.
Yeah, it does. Good job.
Clam's the ultimate mouth. I think
It's all it is mouth.
toilet wisdom. We've returned to it once again. I don't think so.
I don't
Unless
wanna...
this is turning into a they're all real deal.
Well, that's possible. Like, we'll know after this one.
Yeah, but we got to say fake.
Yes, I agree.
Well, this is real. It's from Jabberjaw.
Okay.
Which is that shark that
I'm an
goes,
idiot.
"Nyah, nyah, nyah."
Yeah, I probably saw more of him than I did of Street Sharks, too.
You'd recognize Clamhead.
Didn't seem any of Cowboys of Moo Mesa.
How about Dirty Dog? DAWG. Dirty Dog.
I would say, well, would they have spelled it with a DAWG back then?
Probably they loved misspellings, even ones that seem more modern, like they were doing then in a way that was more gimmicky and less like we're trying to be cool.
Then probably then.
I think so too.
So we're going real? That is, in fact, real. It's from the Quickie Koala Show, which I presume is about a koala that has sex fast.
If you had said Quickie Koala, I would have said fake.
That could seem like a thing you might insult someone with. Like maybe you're the girlfriend or the casual interest or whatever, and the guy he just finishes way too fast. You're like, whoa there, Quickie Koala.
All right, looks like we got a bit of a Quickie Koala.
Brumby.
Because this would be an Australian person.
Sure, Quickie Koala.
Yeah, we would
And
say
Dirty Dog.
we'd be saying something like fast ferret. More of an American animal.
All right, how about
Big, strong. When I think America, I just
Ferret.
ferret. Yeah,
That's what
yeah.
comes to mind.
Red, white, and blue, and stars and stripes, fireworks, guns, and ferrets.
The regal ferret on our flag.
People will do the thing like, what kind of animal would you be? That question popped up when I worked at the movie theater bowling alley thing, and one of the employees was like, you'd be a ferret. And they said it with such confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I guess. I don't know. I don't even think of that because of the size.
Because you're a bit,
But
of,
I'm
a bit of a
weaselly.
tube.
Did that person not like you? It sounds like they might be like,
No
you're a
one
real
liked me.
piece of shit.
I don't know. Everybody likes ferrets.
They're cute.
I may have talked about this on the podcast, but a woman once evangelized on behalf of the ferrets to me at a PetSmart for I couldn't get out of there.
Yeah, don't they have like a little bit of a negative reputation? I feel like
Well, they
Maybe so.
stink.
I should add, this was not a woman who worked at the PetSmart.
Oh, okay, that makes
wow,
it work.
yeah, that's
This was a
extra.
woman in the PetSmart with her ferrets.
That is good part to know of that story. I thought
Yeah.
it was just someone being like, "Oh, you really should get
I
these."
realized when you guys didn't react, you were like, "Well, yeah."
I mean, it was still weird, but now it's really weird.
Right, yeah. So that's always been one of the primary ferret things that stuck in my mind. I didn't ever know what animal I would be necessarily until I got my very specific cat that I have now. And I think I
You'd
would
be
just
that.
be like that.
Mm.
Like I'd be kind of afraid of most things and
But sweet overall.
on the lookout for food.
I do like, though, that someone's expecting this exotic beast and you're like, house cat.
Yeah, house cat. But I mean, that's how I live my life, man. I live the house cat lifestyle. I sleep, I eat.
Did you have to, with
I
this ferret
podcast.
lady, did you have to agree and at the end be like, I will leave here with 4 ferrets?
The start was okay because I was
You were like,
interested
she's
in
making
petting these
good
ferrets,
points.
to be
But
fair.
from her perspective, it's, God, someone's listening to me. I'm going to
Yes,
talk at
because once in a while this happens, like you are open and you engage with someone, with a stranger at a place of business or
And
elsewhere.
then they prove you wrong for trying.
Yeah, and like at first they kind of prove you right because you're like, this is a nice, enthusiastic person, even if they're maybe seem a little not like my style of friend. But, then when enough time passes, you realize there's a non-zero chance you wind up tied up in the back of their car with ferrets on you.
All right, well, we know ferrets are real, but is Godzuki a real Hanna-Barbera thing?
I sure think so.
I bet it is.
You're going yes on that one. That is
Yeah.
real. That is Baby Godzilla
Yeah,
from
I
the
had
Godzilla cartoon.
I almost said that even, but these are, I don't know if all these were on Wacky Racers or I think there might have been other compilation shows of where they threw multiple Hanna-Barbera
Yeah,
characters.
just toss them in.
Like you said, Van, they were throwing anything.
I'm going to, at this point, how hard was anyone trying that was involved in this
Not
process?
Yeah, I think the theme song was like Godzilla, and then it took a second, and then it goes, and Godzuki. And I remember that because I watched that when I was a kid.
It's like the Scrappy Doo of kaiju.
All right. How about Penrod, Penry, Pooch? That's a lot of plosives all in one. Penrod, Penry, Pooch. Like Penry is a nickname. Is that real or fake?
Like Penry Piggins.
I don't know what that is, but sure.
I'm having a hard time going no anymore. Like at this point.
Where they've all been real.
Yeah. He
Is
might
this the
throw
last
one
one
in.
though?
No, we've got one more.
Okay.
I think it's real.
I think so.
We're going real on that one. That is, in fact, real. And by the way, Brian, that is Hong Kong Fooey's real name. Penrod Penry Pooch turns into Hong Kong
That
Fooey.
sounds racist too. I don't even know how. And against who?
That cat in the filing cabinet. Anyway, we have one more. Real or fake? Inch High Private Eye.
That's real.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I hope it's real. You were confident. I'll go with you.
I really remember something like that.
It's totally real. And it's basically the cartoon version of Doll Man.
Fuck. That's what I was going to say. Is what you have here is a drawn Thomerson.
He actually talks a little bit like Inspector Gadget talked. He's like, here I am on the case. I'm Inch High Private Eye.
You mean he doesn't talk like Dr. Claw?
Not this time, no.
And he is an inch high. That's actual, literal truth.
Yeah, literally, he's that
Okay.
big. Yep. And he has a big
I was
magnifying
very
glass.
frustrated by he's not a fucking doctor, by Inspector Gadget when I was a child.
Dr.
Why?
Gadget.
Because fucking Penny had to do all of it.
And Brain, the dog.
And Brain, and then he would get all the credit for it, and it was just really frustrating.
Did you know that the original pilot for Inspector Gadget featured Inspector Gadget with a big bushy mustache? And then they removed it for the show and he never had it again?
Well, the show would have been better.
Big mustache, yeah.
Then you probably have Tom Selleck do the voice, or, anyone from the 80s.
All right, that was it. That's all my real or
Well,
fake
that was fascinating.
Hanna-Barbera. And most of those were real. I only wrote a couple of weird fake ones. Well, Hanna-Barbera already did most of the legwork with that. With all
They
the weird
did some
shit.
fine work. I'm going to have to watch some Inch High Private Eye later.
And you were really into Mighty Mightor, which I was too.
Mighty Mightor sounds cool.
He shoots things out of his club.
Yeah, his name's dumb.
It's just a big wood club that he would beat someone with that shoots fireballs or whatever.
That's the one that worked with Moby Dick?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, they have both a personal and professional relationship.
I like the idea that the Moby Dick cartoon, which I did look up because I was baffled by this, it really is Moby Dick. It's a big whale in the ocean, and there's these two kids who just have to be near the ocean, and then stuff happens.
I wish so badly it was just a cartoon-like version of Ahab trying to get the whale or whatever. Or was Ahab the whale? I don't know. I never read Moby Dick or know anything about it.
Herman Melville. Well, I told this to Katie, the girlfriend. I said something like, I guess Moby Dick's the hero now. And she correctly pointed out, technically, Moby Dick, who's the whale, is the hero.
He was the
He's
hero
just
all
being
along.
hunted
Just
by
like Jaws.
Captain Ahab.
Yeah.
Just like Jaws.
Just like Deep Blue Sea.
Let's get into the Flintstones here. I don't have anything else for you as far as bonus stuff that we can get to before we have to talk Flintstones, so let's just do it. This episode begins, and yet again, this is Season 5, Episode 7, A Haunted House is Not a Home. It begins with a clip from the upcoming episode, like the last one did, And I guess that's a good way to waste the 30 seconds of runtime.
Yeah, because we know they're all about eating that up.
But it's not a good way to showcase humor because it's not funny at all. And we're going to touch on it in 15 minutes anyway. So fuck it. Let's move past it. The intro sequence begins, and it's now the one that we all think of. When we think of The Simpsons, it's the one. I did it. I did it again.
Wow, you had a good run there.
Yeah, fucked it up this time. Well, it's what we think of when we think of the Flintstones because The Simpsons parodied it and did the exact same thing. That's what I meant to go for.
And it has that whole song with words.
Mm-hmm.
More characters in it, too.
TBS, characters welcome. Isn't that a thing?
Yeah.
It was, if it's not still. What's another one like that?
Well, there was a TNT We Know drama.
Yeah, that might be the funniest.
Do
one.
they ever?
Yeah, that's the best one.
I would see that because my mom would be watching NASCAR and
Right.
the commercials would say that. And I'm like, no, you're doing NASCAR. You don't know anything.
USA, this didn't cost that much.
Walker, Texas Ranger. Fred is doing his work as a Bronto crane operator. I don't know if I mentioned that last episode. That's his actual job title.
You said Dino
You touched
Rider,
on it,
right?
yeah.
That sounds cooler. Some mustache man yanks on a bird, which causes it to make a steam whistle sound. So Fred screams his catchphrase, yabba dabba doo, slides his way down the dinosaur into his car. When he gets home, his whole family, including the pets and the neighbor's family, climb into the car with him, and the whole squad goes to the drive-in movie, and drive-in is with one N, unlike two the last episode. Dino breaks the roof off the car. Fred puts the two toddlers on top of the dinosaur's head, and the focal point zooms into the drive-in theater screen, which leads me to believe that the implication is the Flintstones drove to this theater to watch themselves.
Yeah.
Because it zooms in and then we see the show on what the screen would be.
It's like when we drive to like a concert venue to listen to our podcast played back through the speakers.
Just like that. Pretty meta.
Mm-hmm.
We fade into the Flintstones household where Wilma is busy stamping a bird down, and its feet basically is a cookie cutter on a big glob of dough, much like what Barney was tossing last week. Dino is whining because he wants cookies, like a good dinosaur, and then the bird looks at the camera and he says, I only took this job as a cookie cutter because I got a sweet tooth.
Right.
I want more of this.
This is what we were talking about. This isn't actually funny or good, but at least it's harmless.
It did something.
It's a bird that is used as a utensil and says stuff.
There's absurdity.
He's a little resentful about his role.
So do you think all the birds and dinosaurs, they're hired
I mean, I
for
think
their role?
I'm afraid.
Yeah, I
they
don't
are
think they got
slaves.
They did not
Indentured
get a
servitude.
say
Yeah.
in it, I don't think.
I don't think they get a say in the matter, much like animals today don't. You know, we don't use them necessarily as cookie cutters with their feet, though.
That gag, is that a Family Guy gag where they make a Flintstones reference where it's the toilet that's a bird and it eats Peter's stool as,
Oh, that
as he
makes
goes?
sense. Yeah.
And then when he leaves the room, the toilet talks like the bird does in that little sarcastic
Yeah,
voice. Like,
it's a living or
you
something.
think you've got a crap job. I
That's
think
totally
that's
bad.
a Family Guy joke.
Betty yells from outside the house for Wilma, and this gets Baby Pebbles fired the fuck up. She starts baby babbling, only for Wilma to assure her that, look, Bam Bam, he's with them. It's Betty, it's their baby. He's going to show up, don't worry. She has to also reassure Dino that the Rubble's pet kangaroo dinosaur, Hopperoo, will also be joining them. Betty enters the kitchen holding Bam Bam and a big letter, which I'm assuming is made of stone, and Hopperoo comes hopping along behind her, screaming, hop, 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 hop.
I liked it.
With each hop, he does say that.
Bam Bam can't wait to scream a bunch of gibberish at Pebbles, and then Dino and Hopperoo follow suit. They make a bunch of just horrible sounds and noises. It's just kind of overload.
Yeah, and this is another time waster, but it is more pleasant than the car hop song.
It was probably my favorite part of either episode. Just
That's
seeing
fair.
these dumb little things, happy to see each other and delighted whatever noises they were making.
I really enjoyed when they would say Hopperoo out loud. I liked that. That was one of my favorite parts.
Well, Wilma wishes she could understand both the toddlers and the pet monsters, which for some reason then causes the cookie cutter bird to get another spotlight here, and he says, it reminds me, after my shift, I got a hot, sexy bird date with a little cookie cutter myself, huh?
I can't get no respect.
I'm horny for birds.
I gotta get my beak wet.
Boy.
These birds are too horny, Barn.
Fred, I watched a bird bang an elephant the other day.
That's funny you say that, Fred. It's only the dinosaurs I've seen horns on. He wouldn't get it.
You wrote a Simpsons gag right here. Good job.
I wish. It's more of a Flintstones gag.
God damn it. I swear to God, I will get this right.
You need to swear to Matt Groening, you'll get it right.
Yeah, he's going to be infuriated and write us a nasty letter.
He might.
He's a regular listener.
He's like, "Well, I can't put my stamp on this The Critic crossover episode." All right. Bam Bam puts Pebbles in the warm, gooey pouch of Hopperoo and then climbs
Why
on
did
Dino.
you say it that way?
Because that's kangaroos' pouches are warm and gooey.
I know, it's to accommodate the Joeys.
It's a kangaroo's pouch is to their innards, basically.
It's just like Toad. When the mushroom thing comes off, his brain is exposed.
It's real gooey up there. Okay. Him and Lord Zed, they're pretty much the same in that regard.
Yeah.
Brains out.
Yeah, they're exactly the same.
The two monsters and kids then hop and run past the Flintstones' mini couches, which, no joke, I counted this. They pass 11 couches.
Mm-hmm.
This brings me to a point.
It's a lot easier to have a lot of furniture when everything's made of rocks.
Well, this brings me to a point that I held off on mentioning last week, which is that the animation style, I've hinted at it, is bad of all the Hanna-Barbera cartoons. They made it as cheaply as possible, and it's actually called limited animation. It has a term for this style. If you're an artist at Hanna-Barbera, you might get a little pissy when someone calls it limited animation, so they actually call it planned animation. But it's limited animation. I watched this documentary on the Flintstones, and it was more boring than the show. I don't know how.
That's not possible.
It was talking to the animators, and every animator, I'm going to give my impression of what the animators would say on this documentary. Well, when I was on the Flintstones, we would animate Fred. There's Fred Flintstone, who's on the show, and we would animate him. That's how they spoke on this. It was the most boring thing I've ever seen.
I bet this doesn't hold a candle to the Mighty Mightor documentary.
But they would get butthurt and they'd be like, man, it's not limited animation, it's planned.
I think this is as good a time as any to interject that I really was bothered and offended by the character designs, the drawings.
Yeah, they're so hideous.
So the flesh-colored facial hair is a problem for me with Fred and Barney.
When I was a kid, I didn't understand that was supposed to be facial hair. And I remember thinking, this is odd that these characters have like a second face.
It does. It's so weird. And I was telling Van before we started tonight, Barney has no pupils, right? It's just like a circle that's the same color as his flesh.
Because he's the devil's son.
Sure.
It actually changed throughout the series. But
did it? Okay. Yeah. And the one was
well,
it both
depending on the
saw?
position of the moon.
I think initially it was just circles with no pupil.
That's
and
so
then
creepy.
they made it black dots like Wilma.
Yeah, and Wilma's black dots, as I was telling Van, I know you could see them as dots, but I started over the course of these episodes envisioning them as holes, like a bowling ball. Like that you could just reach your fingers into Wilma's face.
Which is fitting given that I feel this show is a bit of a couple of holes in the history of American pop culture.
Well, there are several components to the limited animation thing. Number one, all the characters have something around their neck. And this plays into what you're just saying about their faces. That way, they don't have to animate the body at all. They just animate above the neck. So Wilma has pearls. Fred and Barney have little ties or whatever.
Sure.
It's always something around the neck.
There's a stage when Bam Bam goes through a phase and he starts wearing a choker.
Just like Tim Allen's kid in that Tim Allen show did when he was goth for a bit. But the thing that really bothers me about the limited animation thing is the backgrounds. And what it is you paint one background thing and then you, like, for example, if a character's running, you scroll past that same background over and over again. Bringing it back to this, what we just saw, they had couches. So it was Dino and Bam Bam and all of them running past the exact same furniture 11 times.
You're thinking, like, how the fuck long is this living room?
It looks horrible from a standpoint of we need to get this animated fast and cheaply. It's a smart move. I think that's clever how they did it, but it looks bad.
I always thought of that kind of animation as a Flintstones thing, which I would have thought was intentional, not a budget-based thing. So in a sense, I guess they kind of got away with it, at least to the casual observer, because I had no idea the Flintstones had a really bad budget for their animation, and I just thought this is what they wanted it to look like. It's by design, by choice.
And it never improves in the way we see the Simpsons animation improve.
I couldn't tell aesthetically much of a difference in the first season in this one.
I think there was probably a meeting at some point where everyone said, well, it doesn't seem like it matters if this looks like shit. We're making money.
I watched a different documentary months ago.
Mike, okay, I was going to say, how much research did you put into this?
I did 2 Flintstones documentaries. The other one was a little more interesting, but regardless, this documentary that I'm talking about talked about the history of animation And one of the big things that happened was Hanna-Barbera was the man. They made the most money, they were the most successful, and they did this limited animation thing. And then there was a push in the 80s for a change, and we started seeing other cartoons, I think He-Man comes to mind, where they didn't do that. They didn't do the limited animation style, and that took off. It was far more detailed, and aesthetically, if you look at these different cartoons throughout the years, you can see that tonal shift, and it's massive. It makes all the difference in the world. But Hanna-Barbera mostly stuck with this. Scooby-Doo did the same thing. I'm sure the Funky Phantom did the same thing. Dr. Cheesefoot all did this.
I wonder how much impact like Japanese animation had in American animation, and that so much care was always put into it, versus here where it's like, let's shit out a product. That's the most American one. That's why I really don't like the phrase content. It's such an American phrase. Like, what do you do? I create content. What do you really fucking do? You know, it's like, well, we make a podcast. Say what you do. But I think one of the problems with a lot of modern entertainment is they're not really doing anything. You know, it is just content, something to be shoveled in mindlessly. And I think a lot of these cheap animation shows were the same thing of their day, of like, this isn't anything substantive.
I think the concept that we can say Hanna-Barbera maybe is guilty of that you just said is quantity over quality.
Yes.
It seems like that was and I don't know anything about them from a business standpoint, but it sounds like that might have been their model is, hey, let's not worry about how good these are, let's churn them out.
Well, I mean, we've got the clues based on Van's very long list of 900 bad sounding shows.
That were all group of weird thing helps teenagers solve ghost mystery.
Mhm.
There were like a dozen Hanna-Barbera cartoons that just were that.
Must have been a good market for that.
Well, back to the show with the with the kids running through their Mobius strip of a house. Betty tells Wilma she ran into the mailman. That's why she has this big letter, and it's from an attorney.
Ooh.
I say attorney because I want you guys to say the word they use because I want to hear how you pronounce it.
What word did
What is
they
the other
say?
word for an attorney?
Lawyer.
I'll say it the way only I say it, lawyer.
I say lawyer. They don't practice law.
Oh, you say that too?
They practice law.
Lawyer.
I will sometimes, if I'm going real fast, I'll miss up on it. But for the most part, I've trained myself.
I don't
over
do it on
years.
purpose.
Yeah. So you were just naturally.
I
Like that?
like the flow, the sort of East Coasty lawyer.
I like
thing
to rhyme it with foyer.
Yeah, and but mine is such a. I feel like, and I think someone even told me this when I was younger that I sound like a fucking nerd when I say it.
Oh, I fully agree. When I say lawyer, people will be like, "Meh." The other one that I do, and this pisses Katie off too. What is the second month of the year?
Oh, I don't.
Oh,
do that.
and I know-
used to do
So
that.
you're
though.
using the R
February.
You're using it very
This
clearly.
is one where I started to feel like an asshole.
Oh,
like
and I
at
am
a
an
certain
asshole.
point, I was like, I'll just say February.
That's funny. Well, I got my snooty bullshit out of the way here.
Yeah, I've actually never thought about it. I just like lawyer. I say lawyer.
Mhm.
And then, again, it's because I like to picture a lawyer in the foyer. That part I made up completely.
They
It's
do
not
that
true.
to wait before.
Yeah, I mean,
the meeting.
I've seen lawyers in every foyer I've been in.
And let's get this out there. We're probably more wrong than you are. Lawyer's fine.
I don't think it matters.
No, it doesn't.
Never thought
out,
about it.
Turns out, the more and more I live my life, the more foolish I think my pedantry over language stuff is.
Well, and technically, if we're going to be snobby here about words, it would probably be foyer.
Yeah, that's true.
Actually, I'm going to be
Lawyer
snobby.
and the foyer.
Something that people do now that pisses me off, and it's particularly with online conversations, and you'll find out why, is the phrase LOL. I do not use LOL. I hate LOL.
No, I've
What does it
avoided that.
stand for, guys? Laugh or laughing out loud. Do you know what that is in real life? Ha ha ha. It's laughing out loud. So when people are talking online and you give an opinion, no matter how boring or whatever it may be, and someone has a different opinion and they go LOL, blah, 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 that's antagonistic. They may not think it is, but it comes across that way. Because if in a real life conversation I went, I think pepperoni pizza's best. And Spencer went, sausage pizza's best.
I
This
will
is a
argue
really
this,
funny
that
idea,
the
too.
colloquial meaning online of LOL has changed
Yeah.
to a
It's
polite
evolved.
acknowledgement of, I understand your comment is meant in jest, almost. I agree with you. It is rather absurd, and how did we land on that?
I actually do think, though, that sometimes people do use LOL antagonistically.
Oh, no, they do.
Yeah, it's like, and that's on, like, it's not like a thing where you're reading it that way, they don't mean it. I think not all the time. It's used in everything, so it's hard to say, but definitely sometimes people are being passive aggressive with their LOL.
During my brief forays into social media over the years, I've always had a very clear takeaway that it's just a drain on a person, like trying to interpret what strangers are saying via only text, what you're reading. And especially now, when I was younger, I didn't understand there's a segment of the population, and it is very large, that derives entertainment for simply lurking around on there and saying things to spark trouble.
Just being trolls.
Yeah. And like, I guess like it took me forever to believe that people really did do that. But yeah, for the last 10 years, that's the whole thing. That's the whole internet.
I had an interesting phase, very briefly, I'd say, when I was first discovering the internet, when the internet was discovering itself in the late 90s, and I was like 13, I had a brief phase where I did some troll stuff online because it was a new world and I was young and it was just interesting. So I was doing what people do at any age, where it's like, oh, this is anonymous. I can just say whatever the fuck I want. And so I did some stuff like that, but very, very quickly grew out of it and had zero desire to do that ever again.
And I would imagine that is the healthy way to experience. Like, everyone at some point in their life is going to play around with different forms of expression, and then you have to decide, like, this one doesn't feel right. And for some reason, for like, I don't know, 35% of the population, what feels right is to purposefully spend a big chunk of your day antagonizing other people on purpose, whether you believe the thing you're saying or not.
Let's climb off our old men's soapboxes here, that we do at least acknowledge is an old man's soapbox.
Yeah.
We got that out of our system.
Well, what would a Flintstone soapbox be, so we can tie it back into the show?
Stone.
One of the two things, bird or stone. Oh, and by the way, Marlon Brando, apparently it was revealed that in the early 90s or whatever, early 2000s, when the internet and chat rooms were becoming a thing, he was delighted because he could go on AOL chat rooms as anonymously and just speak to anybody. Because as Marlon Brando, you can't just go talk to somebody.
Well, then he gave himself away by saying Stella all the time, though.
But he was apparently awful. He was a horrible dick, and he would say, fuck you, I hope you fucking die.
Whoa.
And he kept getting kicked off AOL chat boards.
I'm shocked Marlon Brando knew how to get on the internet in the 90s by that age.
He couldn't probably do much else.
No. But number two, if he was on the internet, of course that's what he's doing.
I buy that
He's
part.
an asshole. Well, he's dead, but asshole when alive.
All right. Anyway, Betty tries to open Fred's mail because Wilma won't do it. So she grabs that bird, the cookie cutter bird.
Multi-purpose bird.
Yeah, tries to use it as a letter opener, use his beak and not his feet.
I like that Betty has a little bit of deceptiveness to her personality here. It's the first sign of personality that we've seen from her. Yeah.
Yeah, she basically tries to open this thing, but Wilma's having none of it, and so she snatches it away. Meanwhile, Fred and Barney are riding in Barney's convertible log, which I think that's what it's supposed to be.
I put pencil car.
Or pencil car is good because it doesn't have the overhang like Fred's car.
No.
So I think it's a convertible.
It is a convertible, and like honestly, he got a shitty deal on the lot.
He paid sticker price for it.
Barney got tricked. They did the same thing they did with the drive-in. They were like, you look like a businessman.
But Barney here, he forgets to brake, which I guess is your feet. You also stop with your feet. He forgets to do that in front of Fred's house to pull into the driveway or whatever. They wind up behind a fence to the Flintstones' backyard. This isn't a problem for Fred. He says, no big deal. I'll hop the fence.
Right.
So he does, and then he falls into a hole on the other side of the fence where he gets a bone stuck in his mouth.
Yep. That's what happened.
Because Dino digs holes back there.
And that's his bone, I guess.
Like a dog.
But it's a big bone.
Big bone.
Because it's a dinosaur bone.
Because Dino's a dinosaur. This is
This
is different than Dogosaurus.
The bone doesn't belong in Fred's mouth, right?
No, I mean, I think
Not that
says,
size.
I think he says he just has one every day when he comes home from work.
I'm piecing it together now.
Yeah, it makes
I
sense when
understand.
you think about it.
Pretty funny.
You did the best you could with what that scene was trying to do.
You're supposed to look at it and say, that's not what's supposed to happen, and then laugh.
Exactly. This is different from life.
My expectations have been subverted.
Pat yourself on the back. Wilma helps Fred out of this big hole, and the two talk about the letter from the lawyer for a long time when they could open it up and read it, but instead they just talk about it. Finally, Fred unlaces the letter.
I thought that was kind of cool. I want a
did too.
letter that I can unlace.
It's interesting at the very least, but he reads it out loud for us all to hear.
Dear Mr. Flintstone, you are hereby notified and left you sole heir to his fortune. See, well, my son rich uncle died and left me sole heir to his fortune.
Okay, Van, I know what happened because I watched this episode for the podcast, but you're going to need to explain it to anyone listening.
Here you go. He read the letter that he was sent by the lawyer, which told him that his dead uncle is leaving his massive fortune to him. But here's the thing. He read it out loud. He said it, but he didn't understand it for a few seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Then he babbled and fell over, and that was it.
Yeah.
That's that. The Flintstones. Every joke in this show, each progressive joke makes me go, does this show know what jokes are?
No, I think more to the point, it just does not care.
It really doesn't. It's like hitting its beats, but somehow the beats are mildewy and sad.
Like
Just
a big
like-
mildew wolf.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do too.
Like a big mildew wolf.
Oh my God, I've been in the shower so long, my fur's turning yellow.
I like men, but I can't admit it.
It's too early in history.
When Fred finally comes to his senses, he's delighted to find out that, of course, his uncle has died. It's J. Giggles Flintstone. That's his name.
Also sometimes called Uncle Gigglesworth.
You know, just throw it at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
He leaves Fred as the sole heir to his estate, thus making Fred a millionaire. Fred is so psyched, he screams out to his best friend Barney to get over here and find out about the good news.
We're about to approach the only thing I thought was funny.
We'll see what that is. Barney rushes over and decides to jump the fence, just like Fred, but get this, falls into a big hole.
Yeah.
Sour balls.
You know what else happens? Bone in the mouth.
Same deal, got boned right in the mouth.
I wish we saw Alan Thicke get a bone in his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And
We
interpret
didn't.
that however you want.
It's the exact same
Mhm.
function that the joke is serving. Of course, I'm not going to say this many times, but Growing Pains did it a lot better.
It did.
Oh,
yeah.
boy, yeah.
So the thing I thought was funny is when Fred yells for Barney, Barney's response is, "You bellowed, Fred?"
Okay,
That's kind of funny.
And it fits what Fred does,
Yeah.
which is bellow. Fred reveals to Barney the whole dead uncle thing, and Barney gets psyched up and he starts.
This is awesome. Your uncle's dead, Fred.
He hoots, basically. Hollers a bit, too. He says, I finally made it. Fred asks what he's talking about, and Barney goes, I finally got myself a rich neighbor.
Man, this appeals to today's starfucker culture, doesn't it? I'm an old man again. Nope, no, I'm going to stop.
Well, they both have just a hearty belly laugh amongst one another, and it's for a good long while, too, and then the scene fades. All right, let's go find our own hole to fall into, and perhaps a bone will fall in our mouth. Break time. Later on, the two families are drinking some sort of fancy drink out of their best glassware.
What do you think that is?
Well, I mean, this is the 60s, so, and I'm looking at this legitimately. They wouldn't say it's wine, but they had to imply it's wine.
Mhm.
But I think it's probably like pterodactyl piss or something.
They would call it that. Maybe not piss,
Mm,
but they probably would call it like, I don't know, triceratops juice or something.
jizz.
Yeah, yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, the sweet cum of the triceratops.
Hmm.
And the glasses, the
This is
glassware.
agave-flavored barn.
Did anyone know about agave in the 60s? I don't think so. I think that's
I've been
a-
in so many lands.
You know, Bon, every morning I got to have an acai berry shake. Keep my heart health good.
Bon, I've been wondering if you've tried that boba.
Anyway, the glassware, it's a coconut, half a coconut with a stick on the bottom that serves as like the stem of it. And that's their fancy drinkware. And I don't know. I
Pretty
guess
cool.
It's cool. That's, again, adjacent to a joke that I can get behind. It's using the setting to put a twist on it. And it's not shoved in your face. So I think that's why I kind of like that one.
Do you see it as a good example of luxurious living?
I do.
You see that and you're like,
Coconut
you know,
stick.
that's living.
What's that guy's name from Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous? That guy showing up. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you
No.
guys remember this?
Sure. Lifestyles of the rich and famous
Oh.
here. Got
Nope.
a bit of a brumby.
Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
Yeah, I did the voice wrong, okay?
No, I appreciated your voice. I just wanted to do it too.
See how much money this fella has? It looks like quite a bit.
Coolio sang about him in a song.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that.
R.I.P.
Robin.
Thick.
No. But wasn't his
That's
name
Robin. It's Robin something.
This is a real John Waters from a few episodes ago
Yeah.
situation where we're trying to think of a thin mustachioed film director.
Yeah, and while editing the show, I'm like, you fucking idiot. It's John Waters. But we never said it. So you got that right. But Robin is correct. If any of us come up with it, we'll get a tattoo of a coconut with a stick stuck to it.
Sure.
I like how it doesn't even involve writing reviews anymore. It's just we'll get a tattoo of whatever
It sounds
for
to me
whatever
like
we
we
said.
all just really want to get a tattoo of something weird on the show.
Here's what I want. I want people to listen to this,
Mhm.
to acknowledge that they did that and liked it, and then for us to suffer for it. I'm willing to.
Yeah,
I'm game with
It's a
that.
good reason to suffer.
Well, Fred and Barney, they're not suffering. They have their feet up on their ottoman, but it's not an ottoman, it's a turtle.
They're rich. They can do whatever they want
This
now.
shows it's not just a rock, it's a turtle. They've got more money.
They've advanced. The scene here basically serves the purpose of expositioning that the lawyer is reading the will tomorrow and also that Pebbles is asleep. That's what this scene does,
Mhm.
and then we move past it. Next, it's the following evening, I guess, and Fred, Barney, Wilma, and Betty are driving in the foot car, and Betty pipes up saying, "I've never even heard of your Uncle Giggles, Fred." Fred says, "I barely knew the guy. Only saw him once or twice in my life." Fred says his uncle lived alone in a mansion up on Nightmare Hill,
Sounds safe.
and he was and then he fumbles over his words for a minute, and Betty says, "You mean he was an eccentric?" And that's a pretty good Betty.
That's pretty good.
And then
Your own Betty
pat
impression
myself
impressed
on the
you.
back. Yeah.
It wasn't bad.
Fred corrects her, though. He says, no, he wasn't eccentric. He was a kook. And Barney says, everyone loves a rich kook.
We gotta put him in the funny farm because it's 1964.
There was also that Chevy Chase movie, Funny Farm.
Oh my God.
I have seen that movie
Have you?
not that long ago.
Huh, that's bizarre.
Yeah, I laughed a few times too.
Probably more than you did at the Flintstones.
Yes, easily.
Fred does point out the mansion on the horizon, so we see it. And it's basically made of stone and skulls, and there's a bunch of lightning crashing around
It's kind
it,
of like the one Doug sees in that
Mhm.
Doug episode where he was at a haunted house
where Indiana Jones helped him out Race Canyon.
with Bloodstone.
That's right.
That guy
I think
was
about
cool.
that episode a lot.
I do
'cause it
too.
was really good.
I miss Bloodstone. I wish he were the one in this haunted house we're about to see, but no. Some window shutters start to bang in the wind at the mansion, and suddenly a bat, I guess, comes flying out of a different window, and it squeaks and squeaks. And I say bat lightly because it has bat wings, but they gave it like a bear face.
Kind of a monster, yeah.
It was a weird monster bat. I don't think Flintstones is all that realistic, but we don't need to get into that quite yet.
Yeah, they have phones, but it's prehistory.
They do this weird scene transition thing where Barney says, Fred, I don't even know what goes on when you go to a will reading. What do they do? And Fred says, well, Barn, not much. The lawyer just gets up and says, I said lawyer in
You did?
Fred's voice.
Maybe you think that's how Fred
Maybe
would
that's
say
how
it.
Fred, yeah, you
Maybe.
never know.
But then as Fred says, and says, we fade into the lawyer himself saying, I will now read the last will and testament of the late J. Giggles Flintstone. At least it was a novel transition. I'll give him that.
And this lawyer has a little bit of a Chancellor Valorum type of thing going on.
That's what you say, because I said, and please correct me if I'm wrong. This feels like a Jewish stereotype joke because he's got the big nose, the little
Could
glasses,
be.
he's bald, he's a lawyer.
I could see that too, yeah.
I could be looking
it
too much
did
in.
not occur to me because they have so many guys that look like this,
Sure.
like bureaucrat types. The lone guy in the last episode kind of looked like this.
Mhm. If this were a 2000 show and I saw that character, I wouldn't think that. But because it's a 60s thing, I could see it being a stereotypical
That's
drawing.
entirely possible, honestly.
I mean,
But I
this
could be
this falls short of those those Gringotts things.
Yes, the
Mhm.
guy kind of looks like a goblin. So, and I think that might have been at some point the popular culture representation of a Jewish person is that they're, they look like goblins. So they probably could have tried that in the 60s.
Fred feigns sadness here. He says he'll give all of this up if it would just bring back dear old Uncle Giggles. Wilma rolls her eyes at this, and she knows her husband fucking sucks. And she tells the lawyer, whose name is Mr. Blackstone, to continue. He reads the will, which basically says everything goes to Fred unless something were to happen to Fred, in which case the entire estate is to be divided amongst Uncle Giggles' 3 faithful servants. We see as they are named, there's Creepers the butler. He looks like an actual caveman. I thought that was
He has a
interesting.
unibrow. He's a pretty
Mhm.
cool guy.
But he is also wearing a skirt, and he whips out a switchblade knife like all butlers have.
Yeah.
So we get that impression of
It's
the
a
character.
real big switchblade.
It's
knife.
huge.
Biggest
Also-
switchblade I've ever seen.
Creepers himself is 8 or 9 feet tall.
Oh,
big.
easily. He makes Lurch look like a little guy.
The next guy is not that big, though. That's Pot Rock. And he's the cook. He is maybe 2 feet tall. He's got bad teeth.
He has fangs.
He pulls out a switchblade of his own, except it doesn't have a knife in it. It has a giant meat cleaver.
I actually liked that. A switchblade meat cleaver just kind of got me in the right way.
Yeah, and it's also bigger than his whole body.
It's massive.
And his hat is a white penis.
The joke that they already are building on here, where everyone had a switchblade version of a weapon, isn't at all bad for what we saw the
No,
rest of these episodes.
It's fine, yeah. In fact, these 3, pretty good
these
characters.
these are the best characters they created in the 2 we saw.
Yeah, our last one is Wormstone the gardener, He has big buck teeth, hair covering his eyes, and he's standing behind Barney's chair as he whips out a giant pair of gardening scissors, and he just chops the top of the stone chair that Barney is sitting on, and it falls to the floor. Barney makes a bad joke about this. He says something about Fred's uncle having a sense of humor stone. Like, they literally said a joke and added stone to it, and it doesn't even fit.
I
That
wonder if
was the
they
joke?
snuck it in just like, can we get away with this level of lazy joke writing?
We'll put the laugh track in. People won't know the difference. But this isn't all with the will. It turns out before Fred gets the inheritance, he has to spend one night in the mansion, or the will becomes null and void.
And this is a pretty familiar horror trope, even at the time.
That was my question, is how familiar was it
Yeah,
then?
that you had all those Vincent Price movies
Mhm.
and various haunted
I
houses.
do wonder where this came from, because now it's used ironically, even though, and now
Yeah.
it's like, it's the joke, like you have to stay overnight. And I wonder who the first person is. Probably H.P. Lovecraft. He did all that stuff.
He did. Him or one of those other sci-fi writers.
But
that
H.P.
always get
Lovecraft
mentioned,
would be like, but also there's an ooze coming out of their butt.
and it's mysterious.
Well, and he'd also add some other part there, and everyone's slowly going insane.
Yeah.
And the existential dread of their life is creeping into. He would make it's a lot more than what you're actually seeing with H.P. Lovecraft, and more what the characters are feeling. So it would get a lot more fucked up.
Probably more than this Flintstones episode.
I would guess. I'm going to say Flintstones doesn't go in that territory.
We'll just see what Creepers gets up to.
It's not a good name. So he could be getting up to very bad things.
If you met a guy named Creepers, you'd be like, he seems fine, but I'm going to not take the risk.
I'd say, what about them peepers? Wilma is upset about this stay in the mansion clause, and they do the whole, he was an eccentric, no, he was a kook joke again, before the weather picks up and thunder and lightning crash loudly around. This scares all of our main characters. They're adults who are afraid of the weather, which checks out for cavemen.
It does,
I do give it that. But just then, pounding on the front door echoes throughout the room, and Wilma does like a scaredy cat voice, like chattering teeth, and she says, "What was that?" Creepers opens the door and says it's only the late Uncle Giggles' pet, Horace.
And then thankfully we have another cool character here.
Well, Horace, as it turns out, is not a goofball mailman with a heart of gold, but he's a giant bird.
He's
Just
a
big
vulture
bird.
that is 10, 11 feet tall.
Once again, the animals in this episode, amazing.
Yeah.
Best part of the episode.
Horace clomps his way right in there and makes some weird guttural noises, and Creepers says, "Oh," it's like a Han Chewbacca thing.
Yes.
He translates for the audience. He says, "Oh, you've been down at the cemetery reading tombstones. How nice."
I like that Creepers kind of gives him a little bit of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of gives you a sense in their their rapport around the house when all the monsters are hanging out together and servant monsters.
It's a lot of fun.
I'm already enjoying your descriptions in this one a lot more than our last week one. Just you're saying Horace and Creepers.
Yeah, this is
talking
way
in the-
more fun than just describing verbal abuse.
Yeah, well, there are things to describe in this episode. There was nothing that existed in the last one other than
Yeah.
Ugh. All of this freaks out Wilma and Betty. They rush out the door saying, "Hey, we don't have to stay. Just you, Fred." Barney tries the same thing, but Fred tells him, "No, you got to stay." The lawyer then excuses himself and cackles a whole bunch. And when he walks out the front door, it slams shut behind him. And we see a series of locks just magically appear. And that tells us that Fred and Barney, they're stuck here for the night.
I'm actually disappointed with the show's decision to make this just a Fred and Barney thing. I would have preferred the whole ensemble.
Me too.
See what
It
the
gives you a
girls get
lot
up to.
more. They probably were like, that's too complicated. We have to come up with more plots, more ideas.
Well, and for a little bit, I really thought they were going to let Barney go and it was going to be just Fred. And I was going to be like,
That'd be horrible.
yeah, it wouldn't have worked.
No thanks.
I mean, not to say that it
Right,
did.
wait.
Yeah. It would have been worse.
Well, at least we do get a little bit of homoerotic tension.
Sure. That was interesting how we
Yeah.
got some of the, and it couldn't have happened if it was just, well, it could have, but it would have been a different thing.
Creepers menacingly tells Fred that the other servants and he are excited to have Fred here alone, finally, all while waving his giant switchblade knife around in the air in front of him. And this is one of those animation things where the body doesn't move, the head doesn't move, the arm flails about, and it looks so weird. It kind of got a chuckle out of me just because it was bizarre. The other two concur with this opinion, and then Wormstone chops a lamp in half with his shears, and Potrock uses his cleaver to chop a table in two, all while just giggling.
I'm a big fan of how they are destroying everything in the house, just for fun.
Fred says he and Barney ain't scared of nothing, but then there's a weird giggle echoing throughout the room. Both of the men become scared, which means Fred has just lied again, something we know he's really good at. And later, Fred and Barney are sitting at opposite ends of a really long dinner table, and they can't hear each other. It's funny.
They're yelling at one another.
Because they should be sitting close, but they're not.
I instinctively found my finger hovering above the skip 30 seconds button just to get through that scene. I don't know why. I knew the second one of them yelled, like, this will not have any bearing on the plot. The whole joke is they can't hear each other, and the show will do this for about 40 seconds.
All right, so you know something interesting. You guys might remember this. They do, and I'm sure it's not just this show that's done this joke, but they do that gag in the Michael Keaton Batman movie.
I don't remember
Really?
that.
Yeah,
That's
when
funny.
I don't know which girl is the love interest in that first movie because it's been a while, but it's when he's being Bruce Wayne and he invites her over to his big palace mansion, and it's very inhospitable for just having someone over and having an intimate setting. And that's the joke in the scene is, they have these fancy rich person furnitures and they sit way across from each other at a dining table just like this. They stole this from the Flintstones.
The other thing you're pointing out, though, is like a lot of these trope jokes and things, they can be reworked to where they're effective. Like, I don't remember this from Batman, but if you just had this as a visual and let the visual be the joke without having to, or maybe do like one example of the person not hearing him versus repeating the joke in the same scene over and over like this isn't funny because the stuff they're saying is not funny.
Speak for yourself.
Oh, you love that scene.
Well, that was great.
Well, and another idea that I have is that it could have also worked in the Flintstones if Michael Keaton were voicing Fred Flintstone.
That'd be pretty good.
Michael Keaton?
Keaton.
Michael Keaton.
Keatman.
Michael
I like
Batman. That's where I got that when I said Keatman.
Yeah, they call me Mikey Batman.
Look at it this
I
way.
solve crime when I got the money to get out of the house. Hey, Michael Caine, come in here and tell me what I'm supposed to do.
On that day, Mr. Wayne, I hope not to see that.
I don't understand a word you're saying.
Spencer,
Yeah.
Putting anything in the Flintstones would make it better.
That's true.
Particularly Michael Keaton.
No, I want to see it happen.
Or Michael Caine. Doesn't seem dignified enough for me. Maybe these days I'm a bit of an old racist.
Well, Barney asks Fred about a picture up on the wall featuring a caveman wearing a barrel, like pants. Like they used to do when you'd be nude in cartoons, you'd have a barrel on.
What's up
Oh,
with
yeah.
that?
I don't know.
To me, any kind of cloth would be easier
Than a barrel.
than a barrel and less expensive, I would think. Were barrels just all over the place?
I think there were just a lot of Coopers back then. I just wanted to use that expression. There's just everywhere you look, there's a Cooper, there's a Cooper.
Well, he's also not just wearing a barrel for pants. He has a tiny umbrella, as well as he's wearing a necktie and ratty socks with his toes exposed. He's got goofy eyes.
No shirt.
It's very weird. Barney surmises that this must be Fred's uncle Giggles, but as Fred confirms this, he freaks out because he sees the eyes of the picture move. This freaks him out, and he scoots next to Barney with his chair and his hair standing up, but at least we don't have any more of the, I can't hear you, Barn.
This will be more important for later for the episode's ending, but I guess I should note that at a certain point in history, people didn't yet understand dimensionality, I guess. Like they couldn't see if a thing was 2D, 3D, if it was alive or not in front of you.
What are you getting at?
I do like, though, too, maybe this is foreshadowing what they ended up doing in the moment you referenced later when things got a little bit interesting. You might have to question what's going on between Fred and Barney here. Are things heating up? And maybe this started that, where they're like, oh, I can't hear you, and that painting's weird. Maybe we should eat dinner side by side, Barney.
Just get a little closer.
Yeah.
I realize they like that.
Yeah.
They're not touching even, but Fred's like, I'm safe here.
This sounds like a setup you could use in a future creepypasta.
Maybe
Just
next year.
throwing it out there.
Creepers drops off dinner, which turns out to be alphabet soup, I guess. Barney explains because Fred doesn't know what alphabet soup is.
The concept is just he has no idea.
Totally foreign.
Wasn't there Flintstones alphabet soup? I feel like there
Probably.
was, and maybe that was supposed to be a loose tie-in or something.
Could be.
I would like to retract my previous statement. There was no English alphabet in when there were dinosaurs.
That's true. Yeah, they probably didn't even have math yet.
I couldn't imagine.
I tried alphabet soup as an adult. It's really bad.
It's not good.
Don't do that.
Like SpaghettiOs, I can still do them, but they're not.
I, for heartburn reasons, can't do it either.
Well, yeah, that too. Well, anyway, Barney explains if you swirl the soup around, sometimes you can make words. Fred does this, and then his soup tells him, beware. But just then, Pot Rock comes just sprinting towards Fred and Barney. He's got his meat cleaver, his switchblade meat cleaver, held over his head, but instead of cleaving Fred in half lengthwise, he chops off a slice of bread. And he goes, would you like some bread?
Yeah, Pot Rock is a very good cook. And I liked the image of him running. It looked like dog shit, but I liked seeing him with his fang smile as he ran with his huge cleaver.
I mean, he was loving life right then and there.
I think that's a good way to dress up. If you're gonna have a shitty meal of alphabet soup, put a loaf of bread by it. It looks kind of sophisticated all of a sudden. And then you like it's almost like a bread bowl at that point, or soup and bread just sounds like you're living a better life than if you're just eating alphabet soup, like right out of the can or something.
Or you're at Panera, one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Fred's teeth are chattering because he's afraid, and he mumbles a bunch of stuff saying he's not hungry. He doesn't even eat the alphabet soup or the bread, which upset me. I would eat them. They look good.
And this is a man whose number one skill is eating. We learned this our last episode.
With the storm now in full force, Betty calls Wilma at home and asks if she's scared, and Wilma says, no, I have Dino here with me. But then Dino gets scared and hides under the bed, so Wilma calls him a coward.
Which is kind of mean.
It's aggressive. But then she gets scared because of some thunder, and then they both hide under the bed.
Aggressively calling your pet a coward is pretty funny.
Bean, you fucking coward.
Do you think they ever do this to their saber-toothed cat, Puss Baby?
I wouldn't kick him out of the house. Please stop saying that name. Baby Puss.
Its name. Oh, that is its name.
No, Puss Baby is Spencer's. He doesn't like that.
I don't like any of them.
Fair
I
enough.
never did.
Well, you get a hold of Alan Reed and
Explain.
Mel Blanc and Hanna-Barbera about this.
Fred and Barney are now wandering around the mansion, and they come across what's supposed to be a statue of a knight wearing armor. And by the way, the armor features several turtle shells covering its shoulders and feet. Again, I like the continued use of turtle shells as something sturdy and strong and protective.
Heroes in a half shell.
Shows good. But when the two walk away from the armor, it jumps down and starts to follow them. It whips out another switchblade, only instead of the blade, this time it just has a big club pop out of it.
Mace on a switchblade.
It's a switchblade.
Mace on a stick. I don't know. That's what they actually are, is a mace on a
Mason.
They actually have sticks, but mace on a blade.
Fred sees this, and then he and Barney rush into the bedroom, slamming the door behind them. Then there's more of that ominous giggling we've heard. Fred bends over and looks through the keyhole to see if he can spot anything. While on the other side of the room, there's some statue with a bow and arrow. It gets pulled back, and it shoots Fred in the ass, which is symbolism for what Barney's about to do.
Jumping right ahead with that. I thought we were building that up slowly.
No, I don't.
And by the way, I do think that's how it would go.
You think Barney would give to Fred?
Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
interesting. Yeah, the dynamic could exist that way because Fred could be, that exterior is a lie, and inside he actually just wants to
Be taken care of.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Should get a bow and arrow from the statue.
Just be, kind of handled. I think that's what Fred
I was not going to be able to finish that. Fred wants to be, I was never going to be able to go anywhere with that. Didn't know how to do it. Fred wants that.
wants a little bit of roughhousing.
Giggles are echoing throughout the room still. It's the same one that, it's fucking Jay Giggles, whatever. We know that, right? Everyone knew that.
Wait,
already.
what are you talking about?
The giggles throughout the show.
Yeah.
It's Jay Giggles' uncle. What's his fucking other name?
Uncle Gigglesworth.
Flintstone. Because it's the one fucking word I can't remember in this show. But
Uncle Simpsons.
it's yeah. Fred decides they need to pass the time here. And the best way to do that is to play cards. There's a whole gag where he tells Barney, cut the deck, but Barney's not having it. They're arguing. This is before they give into the throes of passion.
Right.
They're trying to distance from each other because that's forbidden. They know they can't do that. So they're putting on this front.
It's coming out a little hostile right now, but later it'll all resolve itself, if you know what I mean.
The problem is that a Pot Rock's big cleaver reaches through a window, I guess, and cuts the deck in half. It's a pun because you cut a deck, but he literally cut that deck.
I think it's possible Pot Rock was not being antagonistic here, and he does not know that cut the deck. It means
he's thinking this is the thing I can do.
Yeah, he's like, oh shit, someone said the word cut.
Yeah, I have a cleaver. That's my entire identity. I can utilize
If you said to Pot Rock, cut me a break, he would go to your cars and he would slash that brake line. Pot Rock gonna Pot Rock.
Barney and Fred decide it's time to turn in for the evening, and then the three servants pop out of the wall with their weapons, but Fred and Barney don't see it.
No.
I don't know. I guess it's funny.
Yeah, we see it, but they don't.
They don't.
And that's the joke.
Which is weird because they have not been shy about scaring them very up front the whole episode.
But now they're hiding. So Barney tucks Fred in a bed, and he reiterates the plot of the episode, saying, Fred, all you need to do Get a good night's sleep. When you wake up, you'll be a millionaire.
And he's sort of lingering at bedside for longer than would be necessary.
As if something's keeping him there.
Like he has unfinished business.
As Barney does walk away, though, he asks if Fred wants the window shade closed.
Well, so no one can see in.
And then Fred says yes. And so Barney closes the window, but then it opens. And this frightens Fred.
And I think this is symbolism as to sort of a certain awakening opening within Barney at this moment. Like the sort
that
of the
he can't
shade.
close.
And immediately trying to clamp it shut.
Yeah.
Not succeeding.
The shade may be closed on the truth for a brief moment, but
There's no hiding it.
the pressure of nature will flip that shade eventually. If not tonight, then some future night.
And Fred, with his teeth chattering, says, Barney, do you have to sleep so far away? All that other room, I mean, I'm scared. You could stay here with me.
Perhaps the balm of human compassion could lessen the weight I feel in this terrifying home.
But Barney says, don't worry, Fred. I'm only a few feet away. I'll be there in a jiffy if you call for me. So Fred tests this out. He immediately screams for Barney, who rushes in and gets mad about his friend abusing this whole thing that they put out there. But he did come.
Mm-hmm.
Barney did rush over. He didn't stand back. He went to Fred.
And I like to think that's what Fred was really doing there.
Yeah, for sure he was.
Is seeing if he could get Barney to run in there when he called, not necessarily out of fear.
Barney relents, and he says, all right, Fred, I will sleep next to you, but first I got to go brush my teeth. This is the scene at the beginning that introduced us to the show that I said we'll cover later. This is it, and it's almost verbatim, but they do change it a little bit. Barney goes to the bathroom to brush his teeth, and Fred starts hearing this horrible monster noise, which kind of freaks him out a little bit.
I better go get Barney. That sounds like the ghost that giggles Flintstone. Barney, do you have to make so much noise?
So what's wrong with a little gargling?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, Fred does not going to mind that gargling later.
Was that springing sound? Was that what I think it was?
Oh, he's getting bonked.
Yeah. Well, no, I think something happened.
Oh.
Something
that
happened
could
in
be
his
because
pants.
snoring is kind of the alternate. Woo.
Well, let me explain this, guys.
Mm-hmm.
So this is difficult material to master. It was not a ghost making those noises. It was Barney gargling.
Oh,
And so Fred hits him over the head, which is what you do to your
That's
friends
your
when they gargle.
natural
batter
reaction,
them,
yeah.
Finally, the duo do go to sleep, and Barney just keeps tossing and turning. He can't fall asleep. He's fighting his urges.
And they're doing an under-over here.
Yeah, Barney's over, Fred's under the blanket.
They're
and
not
Fred's
doing
out.
a head-to-foot, though.
No. So Barney just tosses and turns. He's like a dog having a bad dream. He wakes up Fred, and he says, I can't get comfortable. I'm not used to a double bed. I obviously don't sleep in the same bed with my wife, because you're about to find out why.
I did think this was funny, the idea of, like, I'm uncomfortable because the bed's too big.
Well, he does suggest first, maybe we should switch sides. They swap. They briefly touch one
They
another as they
graze
cross.
a little bit. Oh, this feels a lot better thanks to your body warmth, Fred.
But Barney does the same thing on the other side of the bed. He tosses, he turns, he says, hey, Fred, I just can't sleep. Maybe we should hold each other tightly into the night. You know, it's not like we're gay or nothing, but sometimes you just want to feel secure in the strong arms of your friend. Am I right?
Doesn't mean I'm some sort of communist or nothing.
Hey, Barn, I could place my head on your chest and maybe listen to your heartbeat, or maybe you could plant little kisses on my forehead there. And Barney goes, hey, Fred, you're really onto something here. It'd be a real shame if we didn't share each other's warmth on this cold night. What actually happens is Barney says he can't sleep unless it's a twin bed, as Brian was hinting at. That's stupid. I do not foresee this for anyone in reality.
No.
But Fred tells him, we ain't got twin beds, Barn, so deal with it. But then a hole opens up in the stone wall behind them, and Potrock appears with his cleaver, and he halves the bed. Goes right between Barney and Fred, which just delights Barney to no end. He doesn't see it, but he's like, oh, great, I got a twin bed. Wonderful.
Very weird. Although another sign that these servants are just trying to help.
Exactly. It's another thing for Potrock. He's like, oh, again, my cutting skills are needed. So
Although Potrock might have been being a little bit of a peepers there to be so ready to cut the bed in half.
Fred freaks out and runs away, and Barney eventually joins him as Wormstone appears and chops at the little caveman with his shears. After leaving the room, both Fred and Barney then slide down the stairway banister.
It's a real butt buster doing that, I bet.
Ooh, it wouldn't feel good. And they don't have pants.
Oh my God, no, they don't.
They'd be getting them in the stones. Am I right?
Shredded taint.
Stones. Because cavemen.
Yeah, because it's, rocks.
But as they slide down the banister and reach the bottom, Pot Rock is there. He's waving his cleaver at the two. So they reverse direction and go up the banister. But when they reach the top, Wormstone is there, chopping at him with his shear weapon. So Fred and Barney go back down to the bottom, where, get this, Pot Rock is there.
Whoa.
Waving his meat cleaver at them. So you know what they do? They go back up to the top. They go,
well, that's not going to work.
You know who's there?
No, there's probably no one.
Wormstone.
Fuck, that was my other guess.
He's chopping and he's chopping. So the guys, they scoot back down. And I believe it's this time. There may be 3 or 4 more cycles of this, but I believe it's this time. They go down. There's the giggling, except then there's a hole. So then they just fall through the hole.
Right.
And this is all happening, and Uncle Giggles is just laughing continuously throughout the house. Scene fades. It's the next day, thank God, and both Wilma and Betty are heading to the haunted mansion to check on their husbands. They enter the house and walk past a bunch of dead animal heads mounted on the wall, and Wilma calls out to Fred, and we see him shush her. He's got his head mounted on the wall like a dead animal.
Which is his default, to shush her, probably.
But you can also see through a door that he hasn't been decapitated. He's full Fred. He's just sticking his head through there to hide. That's his whole bit here. The girls then mention that Fred has completed his task since it's the next day, and so he excitedly yells yabba dabba doo.
Yeah, that's the one.
You're right. Okay, good point.
Betty asks where Barney is, only to finally see the little guy pop out of the cuckoo clock, which may or may not be of doom, but it was a cuckoo clock with Barney as the cuckoo.
It's hard to tell with it being animated if this is from Anthony's.
Yeah, we don't know.
For consistency's sake, I would have liked to have seen Wilma, when upon seeing that Fred is hiding, call him a coward. And just as aggressively as poor Dino that she yelled at.
No, see, what it is she can't do that to Fred because she'll get hit. So she takes it out on the dog.
Yeah, that's always how it goes. The dog gets all the brunt of everyone's frustrations.
Fred and Barney then explain to their wives that they spent the whole night trying to avoid dying at the hands of creepers, Pot Rock, and Wormstone. But honestly, the worst part of all this, Wilma and Betty, is that evil giggle laugh. Fred says he wishes he could describe it, but just then the laugh rings out throughout the house.
This is a group of people who have already experienced that car hop song 5 times. This laugh is nothing.
No, I would take this laugh 10 times out of 10.
It's a much shorter pain.
Wilma says this laugh seems to be coming from that bizarre picture of the weird barrel man. So Fred flings a vase at it. That's his instinctual reaction. We find out that it's obviously Uncle
It's not
Jay
a painting
Giggle
at
Flintstone.
all.
No, it's actually him.
A real live old man has been standing still in a photo and is
Giggling.
For a while,
We
too.
should mention this is one of those 1 foot tall characters. Also, he's not to scale with Newman.
Is he like Barney's size or even smaller?
I think
he's more
smaller.
Pot Rock sized.
Yeah, he's
okay.
closer to Pot Rock. No cleaver though.
Again, I'd like to point out that he has been in this painting for like at least a whole day, maybe more, maybe several days.
My joints are sore just thinking about that.
Hungry too, I'm sure. He needs to eat some of that alphabet soup and bread.
I mean, him pretending to be a painting, this was like, it was a real Saw pretending to be a dead guy while
Well,
Carrie Elwes chews off his leg thing.
He's a
Just
rich
like that.
kook, Van. Of course he's doing that.
Of course. I would have said eccentric, but Uncle Giggles hops down and reveals this whole thing was just a test. It was to see if Fred is worthy of inheriting his estate. He wanted to see if Fred had a sense of humor like his own. Says it was all a great big practical joke, and the servants, they verify it. They were all in on the, quote, joke. Uncle Giggles giggles and says the thing about being a kook, rather a rich kook, and then everybody giggles.
And then things turn fucked up.
Well, this breaks Fred's brain. He says, I too am a kook.
So when you hear kook, I think eccentricity is more along the lines of what you'd think. I wasn't thinking spree killer.
No, I think more like wacky goofball, like harmless goofball.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's got to be harmless. It can't be homicidal.
Fred then whips out his own switchblade cleaver, which I guess he's had on him this whole time,
Could have been useful last night, just saying.
and he starts chasing Uncle Giggles and the 3 servants. They all run out of the house. They're screaming and fleeing from this murderous caveman,
The music gets all drum tribal heavy.
and it's epic. You see the blood gushing out of Creeper's face as he gets hacked to death.
Mhm.
No, it doesn't quite happen. But Barney does yell, sick 'em, Fred!
And Wilma's cheering too. They want this uncle to be
Bloodlust.
murdered in the street.
That's what the Flintstones is known for.
It's bloodlust.
They animated Fred's face quite, I don't want to say accurately or anything, but you could see the menace in his expression when he ran after those four guys.
It was kind of frightening.
It was. I think there's a side of Fred that we don't want to know about.
The ending of this episode is just as disorienting as the beginning of the last one, in that it feels like there's laughing in the back. There's a laugh track, but everything on screen is horrifying.
It belies the actual intentions of what you're seeing. After everybody laughs with Fred chasing the other guys to death, Wilma says, well, back to the poorhouse.
Yeah, and everybody thinks that's hilarious.
They laugh like that was a joke.
It is not.
Well, the show's outro begins, which is basically a continuation now of the intro sequence, and the two families, along with their pets, leave the drive-in theater. They stop at a drive-in restaurant, yet another one, where Fred orders a giant rack of ribs that's so big it topples the car over.
Even with him in it.
Is that a pretty common gag, or is it just this episode? Because I remembered that.
That's the outro for the final 4 seasons.
Okay. I was going to say, I feel like that happens a lot.
It is weird that we saw it in an episode as well. The car didn't tip, but we saw the big rib rack.
Yeah, I guess that they probably didn't have that many assets in their animation library, and they're like, let's use this rack of ribs as much as we can.
Back at home, Fred puts out the milk jar and the cat. What's his name? Just say it.
I'm not going to do it.
What is it, Van? What's its name?
The cat, the saber-toothed cat.
I don't remember. What was it?
I'm not saying those words.
Oh, I think it was Baby Puss.
There you go. So Baby Puss is outside and then rushes back inside through the window, pushes Fred outside, which I agree with. Good job, Baby Puss. Locking the door behind him. Fred bangs on the door and yells Wilma, just like the other one.
This is the same as the other one, right? They didn't change anything here, right?
It is a little different. There's only one milk jar, and the cat goes through the window as opposed to back through the door. Wow. It's slightly different. They reanimated it, but it's the same story.
I'm impressed that you actually looked hard enough to see that. Good job.
I want to set the record straight here. I didn't look that hard. I just happened to notice it. Let's say that. Do you guys buy that?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'll let you have it. You've been through a lot this week.
Scene fades out, and we're done. We don't have to talk about the Flintstones ever again.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Hopefully we won't ever have to discuss it, even in relation to any other shows.
Now, we pretty much covered our thoughts. We don't like the Flintstones. Is there anything else you want to say about this? Because I think I've got it covered from what I've said.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I'm disappointed. I thought I would like it, and I wanted to. So it's actually, I think that we run the risk of ending shows like this more than I want to. So I'm disappointed that we had to do that with this one, because I like to find some redeeming value in a show and not have to say, I don't want to talk about it. I'm glad we don't have to anymore. But that is what we have to do here.
That is the case here. There's nothing I really liked about it. And at least with live action sitcoms that are bad and boring, I do at least find something to do, like in terms of looking at the setting and trying to figure out what the actors are doing. Here, it just felt it's voice performances that sound just like all other voice performances of the era. The characters are lazy, the plot's bad, the animation looks bad. It's too long.
I'm hearing a lot of bad in your description.
Yeah, I did not like it.
I'm sorry for the child me who would have thought that revisiting this at a later age would be fun.
I thought it would be too.
Yeah, I agree with that. The only other thing I'll mention is that, like I said, there were several Flintstones movies and specials that came out later. One of the topics was that Pebbles and Bam Bam had grown up and they were teenagers.
Yeah. Did they get the hots for each other?
They did. They dated. Have you guys seen any of this?
No.
I do kind of remember this.
I think if you saw the image, you would recognize it.
The image is what I'm remembering because they had them in costumes, I believe.
Yeah. Bam Bam is big and tall. He's grown, of course, and he has a turtle hat that's on his head. And he's like square-jawed and like a jock. And then Pebbles is just Wilma 2.0, but as a teenager. But it's jarring to look at. They also had something called like Flintstones Babies, where it was Pebbles and Bam Bam as toddlers, along with Dino.
That's just the Flintstones.
Well, it was just them, Fred and Wilma. None of them, they weren't there. And then they went to other countries and experienced
Seems dangerous, kids that age with no parents.
You think Bam Bam says Bam Bam during sex? Because he could.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Bam,
there
bam.
It's there for the taking.
Wham, bam, bam. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, that's where A's in it, too, when he's...
Bam!
When he's ejaculating.
Bamming, when he's bam-bamming.
Yeah.
Like, you know how it's Pop Pop in Arrested Development?
Yep.
It could be Bam Bam.
Bam Bam.
In the Flintstones universe.
I love to use Pop Pop, by the way. I never said it until I saw that show, but I love it.
They make it work in 4 or 5 different contexts where one person means it and the other person doesn't, and it just it's just like how the Flintstones did that. All those callbacks and setups in the episodes that we saw.
Deep.
So anyway, cool show. Do you mind if I go ahead and just take it over?
Be my guest. Greetings and happy holidays from the future! It's me, Van Lee, and guess what? We have switched up our schedule slightly. This year, for the holiday season, we're going to be doing a little bit of a bonus that we kind of did last year, except we've shrunk it a bit. This time around, I will be selecting a show from Spencer's catalog of shows that he's hosted. Brian will be selecting one of mine, and Spencer one of Brian's. And that's going to take place over the following 3 weeks. So the show reveal that's about to happen here is actually going to occur in early January. So stay tuned to find out what that is. But to steal Brian's thunder, because we forgot to record a little bit of a snippet here, we're going to be revisiting the Jeffersonian and talking Bones next week. That's right, yet another trip to Bones. This time around, Santa explodes, Booth is Booth, and Bones doesn't understand emotional things. You know how it goes. It's a lot of fun, so stay tuned for that. But let's get back to this episode where we will be revealing the show we'll be covering when we return from our holiday break in January. So stay tuned and happy holidays.
I now said that I was going to do the other part of this for Brian because Brian's hosting next. And once again, we're continuing our hot potato, which means that I am picking for Brian since I just picked for Van.
It can't be Home Improvement again.
No.
Van already made me do that.
And it can't be the Flintstones.
So Brian's doing his second round. And then it concludes, which one of you are picking for me?
I am
you
picking
are.
for you.
It concludes with Van picking for me. And then we are finished with our hot potato.
Oh, and in the middle is me picking for Van after he selected Home Improvement for me. So we'll just have to see what that'll be.
Here's the other thing. What you are just now picking for Brian determines your fate. Because if it's what I think it is, you're not going to like your fate because it's going to fuck up my whole process. And that's fine because I've had a thing planned for you for a while that will not work if you do what I think you're doing. We'll see.
I'm so curious as to how this would mess the thing up.
All right. So, no, we're going to find the whole story out soon enough. I'm picking for Brian. So you tell me what you think it is, and Van, you tell me if that's what you thought it was going to be.
Okay, my whole assumption, because since well before we've done Hot Potato, you've said that the two shows are connected. I assumed I would be getting the Jetsons.
Bingo. That's my thoughts.
I can totally see why you guys would think that. And I was actually hoping you would.
Oh.
And then I was thinking, I could misdirect you.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to. It's the Jetsons.
Oh, okay. Okay, so this will not be my last chance to talk about the Great Gazoof.
No, although I don't think I picked episodes with him in it. I don't know. Did you guys know that the Jetsons only did one season and then was gone for 20 years?
No.
Came back
What?
in the 80s?
Not at all.
I just now learned this, and we'll have to get the details because I just glimpsed it in IMDb, so I don't know.
Huh.
But I was confused why when I was looking at the full catalog, which is only 3 seasons total, I did not know that, it was showing so many episodes that I wanted to pick from the 80s. I was like, what is going on
That
with
is
this?
strange. I had no idea.
Apparently,
Oh, it was an 80s show?
yeah, I
would have guessed part
seasons
before
2
that.
and 3 were.
Oh, okay.
Season 1 was a 60s show, so I just went ahead and picked 2 episodes from season 1
Good choice.
because I don't really. If we're contrasting it with the Flintstones, I don't want to go into the 80s for even one of them, even to compare between the two Jetsons. So we're sticking with 60s Jetsons, which I guess was only 1 season. Brian will tell us all about that when he's a Jetsons expert.
Really gets my sprockets in a roll.
So our 2 Jetsons episode,
Rosie.
Astro.
they will both be in these. We got season 1, episode 11, A Visit from Grandpa.
Not a grandma episode.
Nope,
Grandpa.
I'm going with the other direction here. The Jetsons are visited by George's zany grandfather, Montague.
This already sounds
That's
better.
why I picked it. It was like, there's no way we can't do an
It's
episode
a real
about
future
Montague.
name, just like Elroy.
I can't wait to see, and it's the same era because season 1, how we got this is what they think cavemen were like.
Mm-hmm.
Now we see what we were supposed to be living in now in 2023. I'm sure it was set probably in our past, and they thought it sounded super futuristic. The next one we're doing, season 1, episode 16, Millionaire Astro. A millionaire tries to take Astro away from the Jetsons, claiming that Astro is really his dog.
Mm-mm.
Pretty clear that in the 60s, they didn't understand that a millionaire wouldn't be as much in the future.
Yeah, they act like there's as much money as you can have. $1 million.
All right. Jetsons coming up. That'll be fun.
Well, we thought that about the Flintstones.
Yeah,
and then look
hope
what
it's
happened.
better. We'll see.
I have to think that this will be more fun.
I feel like it will be. I think maybe that some of the positive vibes we were associating with the Flintstones is because the Jetsons is awesome. And we just projected. We were like, the Flintstones is good too.
There's a certain amount of the Jetsons where I'm thinking in my head, at least, they have to make things up. They have to try to be creative because the future hadn't happened yet. In the Flintstones, it's like, we're going to combine the boring-ass 50s with the boring-ass past.
We're, of course, going to, because it's the 60s, we're going to see that same marriage dynamic between George and whatever the wife's name is.
They correctly anticipated that well into the future, everything would be just like that.
We would never do anything different with marriage. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. I know it was predictable, but I didn't mind because the buildup was good.
It feels like a logical pairing, especially since this aligned back to back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it worked out really well that way. I thought I might try to surprise you guys, and I could have picked one of the other Hanna-Barbera shows or whatever.
Like
but
Mighty Mightor and Moby Dick. Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that one existed at the time.
Well,
but I had to go with the obvious choice.
Van, whatever this messed up for you, at least now you can give Spencer
Can we
Mighty
hear about
Mightor.
I'm not going to tell you the show, but it's animated. I don't want to do 3 animated shows in a row.
Gotcha.
Oh,
It'll
gotcha.
pivot in that regard. But you have sealed your own fate, my friend. Because now, in case you guys don't remember, my nickname is the Elephant.
Hey, I thought the Flintstones was going to be a gift to you.
Yeah,
so
same with
it
me
didn't
when
work.
I gave you Duck Dynasty.
Definitely. It didn't work, but my intentions were good. But you do what you have to do.
We've got some time for that, though.
That's fine.
It'll be okay. Everyone else out there, thanks for tuning in for our Flintstones episodes. Tune in next couple of weeks for Jetsons, where you see conveyor belts and sprockets. And I think
all
that's
kinds of stuff that we don't have yet that we were supposed to.
And you live in the clouds, like Cloud
so.
City, like Lando. Is it because it's ocean below? We'll find out.
And I think a lot of the buildings have rings around them, like Saturn.
I mean, when you think futuristic, you think rings. We've all done that. Check us out on youtube.com, Bootu Inc. You can search right there, or youtube.com/Bootu Inc. Whatever, get there. BootuInc.com, written stuff. I don't know, all the other shit we do. Just go check it out. Patreon.com/Bootu Inc. There's bonus stuff on there. Go check that out. You can leave us money. You don't have to, though. It's free. Let's leave. Anyone have anything fancy to say that relates to the Flintstones?
I really think we rocked these episodes. Stone.